And let me begin by making a dramatic announcement. You ready? We're going to win the state of Texas.
U.S. presidential candidate Bernie Sanders confidently predicting victory, although he is still a long way from winning the Democratic nomination. He faces a strong challenge from Pete Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, not to mention Amy Klobuchar, Joe Biden, and Elizabeth Warren. The next test of all of them is just around the corner, the Nevada caucuses on February 22nd. So for more on this, we're joined, as we often are, in Washington by Julia Manchester. She is a reporter from The Hill. Good morning to you, Julia. Thanks again for joining us. Before we get to that Democratic race, let's begin with the week that was for the U.S. president. Many are calling it Trump Unleashed, Trump Unbound, all of this in the wake of his acquittal. Firings, pronouncements. What do we make of the state of the president this week?
Well, a lot of critics are saying this is President Trump essentially on a high after his acquittal, and it seems like he is expanding his use of executive power, really. And I think that has a lot of his critics, such as the Democrats in the House, Democrats in the Senate, really criticizing him over this expansion of his executive power, as it seems. And it has a lot of people scratching their heads over, the firing of those witnesses from the Justice Department who testified in the impeachment trial. And then you have Attorney General William Barr essentially saying that President Trump tweeting makes it hard for him to do his job. So kind of frustration, I would say, on both sides in Washington.
What do we make of Barr's comments? Some have suggested that it was an attempt for him to separate himself from the president and yet still remain within the presidential fold. Are people speculating at all on his future based on his comments?
Yeah, I mean, that assessment does make sense to him. I think probably what happened was he was getting a lot of pushback in the Justice Department, which is made up of a number of career officials that didn't take their positions in the Justice Department as part of any administration. They are just permanent career officials in those administration and, in the administration and past administrations. And I think they probably got frustrated with President Trump's handling of this, his politicizing of the DOJ on Twitter, and Barr essentially kind of working in lockstep with him. And I think this was Barr kind of at a breaking point. Remember, next week, Barr will testify before the House Judiciary Committee, so that will definitely be something to watch, but definitely Attorney General William Barr in a tough spot. But you're seeing the president and the White House communications team essentially saying, look, Attorney General William Barr has a right to say that. However, the president has the right to tweet as well. Okay, on to the other big story in U.S. politics this week. The Democratic presidential candidate race, Bernie Sanders, looking very confident coming out of New Hampshire and, of course, his good showing in Iowa. What do we make of his momentum? Does he have it, and can it continue, do you think? He absolutely has momentum, and I think he definitely has momentum because he's seen as a bit of the comeback kid. Remember, in 2016, he very, very narrowly lost, I would say, to Hillary Clinton in a lot of these early states. And I think this is him essentially coming back with a stronger progressive message, a stronger base. He's worked to, make that base more expansive, really working to reach out to a number of minority communities. You're seeing that pay off for the polls for him in states such as Texas and such. However, the debate is, whether he has a ceiling at this point in his support. We really won't know, I think, the final shape of the race, I would say, until after Super Tuesday, and that's when Mike Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City, jumps in. So it's hard to tell where everything is now, and you also have a number of moderates competing against each other, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Joe Biden, and they're essentially cannibalizing each other at this point. Remember, Klobuchar and Buttigieg together, their support together, if they were one candidate, would have beat Bernie Sanders in the New Hampshire primary. So we're also watching the moderate lane as well. You mentioned Joe Biden, of course, the former U.S. president, worth underlining, Obama's vice president, perhaps one of the more successful Democratic presidents ever, certainly for those within the party. A favorite going in, but many are saying time is numbered for him. What do you make of his chances, and what does he have to do, Biden that is, in the coming few weeks? He has a very uphill climb in the coming few weeks. Remember, in Iowa and New Hampshire, his campaign definitely downplayed expectations, saying that he likely, may not win. However, we didn't expect him to perform as poorly as he performed in those states, coming in 4th and 5th place. They will argue that those states were always kind of a long shot for them. However, he is the former vice president of the United States. He should be performing in these states with better name recognition than he is. So right now, they're kind of putting all of their eggs into this Nevada and South Carolina basket. But the problem with that is that you're seeing a number of other campaigns, whether it's Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, Bernie Sanders, really ramping up their operations in those states. Joe Biden has a lot of support among the Black and Latino communities in those states. However, you're also seeing Bernie Sanders ramp up his support with those communities as well, especially younger Latinos, younger African Americans who are fired up and they want to, they're connecting with Bernie Sanders' message. I think a lot of these voters in these states are also looking at Joe Biden coming out of Iowa and New Hampshire and saying, look, we want to elect someone who will be sure to beat Donald Trump. And right now, he's not necessarily looking viable.
Interesting times in your part of the world, as always, Julia. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
The Hill reporter Julia Manchester speaking to us from Washington, D.C.